Hey guys, just a quick update before we get into this episode. I will be at Youmacon this weekend. That is going to be from the 1st November all the way to the 3rd. There is a anime convention and a fighting game tournament within the anime convention. So it's Youmacon, and then Youmacon Battle Opera is where I'm going to be doing some commentary this weekend. I cannot wait. I'm also bringing my family. But during the downtime, if I'm not doing any commentary, please stop by and come see me if you happen to be there. If you're not going and you are in the Michigan, specifically the Detroit area, what are you doing? Go check it out if you can. It's going to be awesome. I highly recommend it. I went last year. I'm so glad to be invited to do commentary again this year. So I cannot wait. And I hope I see you guys there. That said, let's get right into the episode. Hello and welcome to FGC Philosophy. I'm your host, The Philosopher, and this is where we focus on leveling up inside and outside the virtual arena. I do that because I want to see the FGC grow. I want to see the FGC grow, not just in numbers, but in mind and body and spirit, if you believe in that sort of thing. So I do that by talking about topics and having guests on the show that I think will help us all level up. And today's guest is someone who brought up a good conversation, and I want to delve a little bit deeper into that, into the realm of improving, learning Street Fighter, and in the way that he wants to go about it. So my guest today is the Ace of Spuds. Yeah, so I guess tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the FGC.
So I got involved properly heavily, maybe a lot more recent than some people. I've been playing fighting games since I could walk, as far as I remember. But my involvement properly started maybe 2010, 2011, Street Fighter 4, those kind of games. The last 2 or 3 years now is when it's kind of, I suppose, rocketed it up a bit. I've started doing commentary at a level to which I wasn't doing before. So really my kind of place in the FGC right now, in my opinion, is as a commentator and hopefully going forward into as a coach. That's where I see myself going.
Okay.
Right now I'm working with the Salt Mine League, which would be it is the largest online tournament we have here in Europe, and then with an Irish production team, As One Productions, who run Celtic Throwdown. So I'm working with both of those at the minute, just with the commentary.
Very cool, nice. Where did your passion for fighting games come from?
So it's funny because actually before I almost transferred my passion. Okay, in a way, in that. Previous to the FGC, I was heavily involved in FPS games, both playing at a high level and coaching. But when I kind of, especially with the release of a much more modern fighting games, Tekken 7, Street Fighter 5, Guilty Gear Xrd, when I started getting into those, I suppose more seriously than I'd been playing casually at locals beforehand, I found that my own drive was much better suited to this kind of solo 1-versus-1 environment where I could take as much time in a training session as I wanted to, whereas first-person shooter games in the setting I was playing in, it was a team setting. Now, not to dismiss the team setting by any means, but for my own personal way that my brain works, the way I learn, I find the 1v1 setting and the kind of, I suppose, mutual respect that kind of came from the arcade culture of the FGC, I find that way more in tune with my own being, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's a very similar story to me. I used to play a little bit of Halo 2 back in the day, and found that for multiple reasons I do love competitive fighting games of all the games, because I work in esports, and one of the biggest things for me is fighting games, even though I work with like League of Legends and Overwatch and stuff like that, and I love those games, but for me, my baby is fighting games. So what led you to becoming a coach? Like, how did you get into coaching?
I've always, not always is a mistake. So I'm 25 now, but I think early on as an adult, even 18, 19, I realized that the teaching, instructing, that it was just a natural, inclination I had. I enjoyed doing it. And similar to the competitive side of it, I actually started in the FPS realm. I still, to my lament, moderate a subreddit that's around coaching for a different game, and it can sometimes be stressful. But the point being, the FGC is not my first time coming at a game from a coaching aspect. The reason why I enjoy it, it's going to sound incredibly, maybe a little pretentious, But the nature of sitting down and just, helping someone and seeing them improve, or, seeing that moment where somebody, it just clicks with them and you remember how that felt for you, it's just a great feeling. As good as competing, for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I don't know if I told you this as well, but I am a coach, not just in gaming, but just more of a life coach. But I do favor the fighting game community. And I 100% agree with you. Like seeing someone else have that click in their mind, whether it be something for personal development or for like getting better at a game, it's a great feel. I mean, there's science behind it. Now that I'm a little older. But yeah, for the sake of like the short version, yeah, I can totally relate with what you're talking about.
Well, even on I don't mind taking a personal note as well. You didn't mention you saw my own personal situation because I did share that recently on Twitter. But I, having dealt with psychologists for my entire adult life, started realizing, hey, a lot of the stuff they're saying seems to be things I'm thinking when I'm struggling at games as well. Maybe if I applied that to this, I'd be less stressed and do better. And it worked. So in a sense, it's almost, I feel like, these lessons are almost universal. We should be telling everybody these lessons.
Yeah.
If the method of fighting games is the way you teach someone to, tackle challenges a bit more, more intuitively, cool. But I think fighting games is such a good avenue for learning because it's such a self-centered, specific, it's just you and the game.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons that I love fighting games more than for myself, as an analogy for self-development more than other games, because it's easier to identify those sort of things. And I love, especially the in some ways, the arcade mentality. I'm delving a little bit away from the main topic, but we'll circle back to it. And because I do love the universal truths, something as simple in today's day and age, I talk about this a lot. We're in an instant gratification era where we want everything right now. Like everything is a la carte, food, one day delivery, TV shows.
Yeah.
Success is not one day delivery. You can't, there's no shortcut to that. There's no magic pill. And I think fighting games are the brutal truth that we need when we want something that we can't have right away.
I get you. That's a nice poetic way of putting it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of brings us to our point, because you were talking on Twitter with Street Fighter, the Reddit Street Fighter, and he had made a post saying, I think fighting games cause long-term amnesia. Either current fighting game players forget how they got their current skill level, or they're just terrible at explaining how they got there. Your response was, I'm extremely interested in learning theory and really hoping to delve into this regards to fighting games in coming months. Because as you say, the inability to identify with new players is such a persistent issue. So from there, like, what are your thoughts like that you were thinking when you said that?
Okay, so one of the main things I think is that it kind of hits the nail on the head that a lot of the high level and professional players are bad at teaching through no fault of their own. It's, in my opinion, because of the methods via which they learned. You know what I mean? Like you make a good teacher by them being a good student. So I actually made a follow-up post on a similar topic by the Reddit Street Fighter Twitter, maybe a couple of days later, where I just made the point of, where did Daigo learn to play Street Fighter? He learned it over the course of months, if not years, in an arcade, with everybody else just figuring little things out bit by bit by bit. Whereas, as you said, in that kind of instant gratification age that we have now, people are looking for quick, easy solutions. But a lot of the times, somebody like Daigo might be able to explain the game in amazing detail to somebody who's fluent in FGC terminology. But getting into that mindset of where he was day one in an arcade, I'm sure is difficult. So I think the way to address a problem like this is you need to look at the middle ground. And when I say middle ground, I mean, maybe younger talented players who maybe kind of grew up with the more kind of conventional things that we view as how you learn a fighting game these days. Things like your YouTube tutorials, your Discord channels, your documents, your Google Docs that we have for every anime game. So those kind of things are a step in the right direction. But essentially, I don't think you can solve the problem of long-term player amnesia, because I think that's a problem inherent to how somebody learns the skill themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've learned the skill through just hard grafting, grinding, hours and hours and hours of playing, which is how most of these old school heads did learn, they don't know a way to teach other than that. which is, I think, the effect that the Reddit Street Fighter Twitter was picking up on.
Yeah, definitely. And there's 2 points I want to hit on, and you can let me know what you think. Because I think from the psychological aspect, and I wish I could remember the actual terminology of this because I learned this a few years ago. From the brain point of view, the part of the brain that deals with communication is different from the part of the brain where you store like long-term knowledge.
Yeah, that's
so.
Yeah.
The cards are already stacked against these pros in terms of teaching other people, because when something is naturally learned more so than structurally learned, it's really hard to articulate what it is that you're doing. And then, at least in America, I can't really speak for over in Asia as much because their culture is a little bit different. But I really equate the arcade player mentality or background as the street fighter, someone who learned how to fight on the streets. They learned because they had to survive.
Yeah, exactly.
But then there's also the martial artist who they learn from a sensei. And if you've ever done karate or any sort of sport that has a coach that teaches you traditionally, or even music, you start as essentially a white belt. You start as a rookie, and they teach you to do specific movements, and you don't move forward until they feel you've mastered those movements. So already you have somebody above you judging your skill level and kind of walling off your skill level until you until they think that you've mastered what you need to master to build upon that. And then everything that you learn after that is built upon until you get to a black belt. And then from my style, once you get to a 3rd degree black belt, then you have to teach somebody else. So teaching, you are in a sense learning how to do martial arts so that you can teach somebody else once you get to the point of mastering enough.
Exactly.
We don't yet have that kind of mentality in fighting games. So I think, to your point, that's a big part of why at least American pros aren't really good at teaching other players how to get better.
I think you hit the nail on the head exactly, in that we need, not everybody, because obviously there's going to be some players and some people who learn via different methods, but I think we do as a community need to adopt a mentality that if you are aiming to improve and become one of the best players, or a professional player, or a content creator of much merit, a lot of the time there's a huge amount that will even benefit you personally as a player by being able to teach others. Mm-hmm. It's an age-old saying that, the better you can teach something, the better you know it yourself. And I think that's, as you said, it's something that we do need to adopt as a community, that kind of mentality. If we look at the community right now, and if I was being brutally honest, brand new players, somebody brand new to the FGC, or even relatively new, is going to mess around with a few games, they're going to learn more from watching, I don't know, Sajam's 10-minute rants about different things and problems in the FGC than they are from actually watching somebody play the fighting game. Mm-hmm. Or probably than actually playing the tutorial, which is a crime in of itself, but that's a different topic. But I think you're absolutely correct. We as a community, at least going forward, need to adopt this mentality of learning to teach, or at least some of us do.
Yeah, most definitely. This one I do remember. I had to Google it, but I do remember. I knew the name of it. And I couldn't remember exactly how to explain it. But this one is called the Feynman method, which it goes back to what you're saying, where you learn when you're teaching somebody else, you actually improve. So the overview that it gives me is it's a mental model named after Richard Feynman, a Nobel Prize winner, physicist? That doesn't seem right.
Physicist. I'm actually familiar with this because I'm actually an engineer by trade. So this is something that one of our lecturers used to rattle off in university 24/7. So yeah.
Oh, very cool. Nice. Yes. Basically, it's a design technique to help you learn pretty much anything. So understand concepts and don't really get to remember stuff you have already learned, and study more efficiently. Yeah. So I did study this a while ago, and it is very helpful because when you try to teach people other things, you're using a different part of your brain. So it's really important to have that mentality. And I do get frustrated because I see better players than me have struggling to teach. I remember me learning from somebody, and he had that arcade mentality, and he would just have a jolly old laugh when he would do these things to me, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, I just bodied you, and I'm like, but teach me what you did. And it's he couldn't. He just he did not know how to.
I mean, it's an ongoing joke that a bad player will tell you, and the matchup advice is just do X. The mid-tier player will give you their Google document, and the professional player will say just do X. But there's a lot of merit in that,
Yeah.
And what you're and one of the most important things about the Feynman technique, because it's something I've looked into as well, is that in essence, what you're attempting to do is explain it to somebody who's totally not fluent in the conversation or the topic that you're having in simple, basic terms. And that is proving or working with yourself to know that you fully understand it. For example, if, you were watching or I was watching Evo with someone who's no understanding, and I start trying to explain what just happened, don't use the word shimmy, don't use the word mix up, explain it in super simple terms to know if you understand the concept. And that's it. That's the beautiful thing about it. And I think even among the best content creators and even amongst the best instructors we have currently in the community, more of that needs to happen. It all leads back to the same thing of, this FGC amnesia. And we almost all forget just how, oh my God, what is going on, befuddling these games are day one.
Yeah, most definitely. Something else that I try whenever I'm teaching somebody a fighting game, the two things that I do is I try to identify their level of knowledge. What other fighting games have you played? What other competitive games have you played? Shooters, MOBAs, anything that I can use to reference to help them stick what I teach them. But then I also make sure that any term that I use, like meaty is a really big one for me, because that term is actually used at least two different ways. And it seems like no one, that's one of those FGC amnesia things you're talking about, where no one seems to understand that you're using it as a verb and you're using it as a noun. And
the one that gets under my skin is fuzzy.
Yeah,
people use it for... Depending on the game, people use it to mean different things, and they're like, oh wait, that's what it means, and you're just like, oh no guys, this is the original term. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So I really recommend people identify when they mean different things. So I was looking at the Feynman method, and here's a really short overview of the 4-step process. It's basically choose a concept, teach a toddler, so teach it in layman's terms, identify your gaps, and then review and simplify. So make it more simple than what you already have done, and that's essentially helps you be able to condense that information in your brain, but also teach it onto somebody else, so that revolving wheel starts to happen where you're getting better and you're teaching other people to get better. In your opinion, what else do you think we can do as a community to start focusing more on getting better?
The number one thing that has to change, and people have been saying this forever, and we've been saying it forever because it's true, is we need better tutorials. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the game itself. If it's not being put in the game itself, we as content creators, I think, should take it up on ourselves. Currently, I've been going through some notes. I've been talking to friends of mine in the FGC, friends of mine who have played Street Fighter just to humor me and don't enjoy it or aren't in the FGC, and getting a lot of opinions and ideas. But even people often talk about, for example, the Undernight tutorial, and it is fantastic. But once you get past the first maybe 20, 30 minutes of it, you are kind of, even though it's explaining the concepts, without that fluency in fighting games, you're going to be very lost very quickly. And you're also not going to understand which of these lessons is important. The way I envision it, and I might be some people might think this is maybe too rudimentary, maybe too idealistic. I want a tutorial where you are put in as Ryu and you are fighting Ken, and a little bit of text comes up on the screen explaining what a normal is, and then explaining what a poke is. What makes a good poke? Why is it called a poke, for example? And then simply has you press a couple of buttons and try and figure out which ones might be pokes, and then tells you, oh, well, this standing medium punch for you is a very good poke. And explain the concept that simply.
Yeah. So here's what I think, to your point, just thinking about this now, because I work at a university where we have esports there, and Overwatch is one of the more predominant games, and I really like their custom game mode. Overwatch and Rocket League are two games that really do this well. They have custom games in there where they can basically play around the game and make all kinds of different modes. And a lot of these people make education, they make game modes where you're basically practicing a specific aspect of the game, like your flicking skills or your tracking, things of that nature. I think that I don't trust. I love Capcom, but I'm also very critical of them. I don't think Capcom or many other game developers are skilled enough as a player to be able to make these tutorials, but I think they should open it up to the players to be able to make different tutorials somehow. Like
little drills that you or I could create, for example, in the game. Is that? Yeah. I was just going to say, I agree completely. Even starting off with that base example of, a poke, You simply go on to this is a projectile and a little drill of jumping over projectiles, neutral jumping projectiles, and then introduce the concept of a grappler and make most people quit the game. But I mean, it's important to, step by step by step. I think the problem is, like you're saying, I don't think there is somebody at Capcom fluent enough in high tier play to possibly create this content in the game. I think that's a fair statement to make.
Yeah, it's no insult to Capcom unless they actually hire people, because I know they have like Combo Fiend and people like that working for them. But I do think that it would be easier on them if to just make it like, hey, you guys keep hacking our games anyways. Why don't we just make it to where you can make your own game modes and you make the tutorials? Like you do it, you do it better than us. I think that would be the best way to go. There was a YouTuber, I'm going to have him on the show here in the next couple of weeks, named Silos, who made a Sakura tutorial, and that was kind of an interesting...
Oh, yes, I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. And then I'll share my idea, because I've been playing around with this for like the last 6 months, and I just haven't pulled the trigger on like recording everything. But I've been trying to learn a new character. My main character is Fong, and I've gotten to platinum with him. And I think that I still have a lot more potential to grow, but I think realistically, direction. I love Street Fighter League and all that kind of stuff. I want to be able to be on that. I think having a secondary character is really important. So I picked one that I thought was pretty strong, which is Akuma. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to learn this as closely to martial arts as possible. I don't care how long it takes me, but when I sit down and play Akuma, I'm going to treat it like I'm in a dojo. So I started from the very beginning with, people like Joe Monday and his Geef's Gym have been sort of a scroll, a ninja scroll for me, martial arts scrolls. And I've been, practicing my max range normals, and then practicing my hit confirms. Like that's a big one for me, is hit confirms, and making it to where I don't have to even think about it. And that's another term that's used two different ways, by the way. When I say I'm practicing my hit confirms, I mean that I'm teaching my body to react when it hits, and teaching my body to react differently when it doesn't hit. So that means first making it to where I can do this. I can do all the hit confirms for Akuma that I know of consistently without dropping a combo. Then setting the dummy to random block and doing it until like 50 times in a row, hitting the character 50 times in a row, and then also if he blocks it, making sure that I do that 50 times. The counting is a little bit muddy, but I try to sit there from both sides, and I do that. And I do that more than I need to, but everything else that I'm going to do is going to build off of that for the most part. And then I practice my anti-airs and, just really, really simple things, but to a gross amount until I think that I'm comfortable doing it. And then also like my B&Bs, and I'll go online or I'll play with people, and I have no meaties. I have no mix-ups. I can mix them up on the fly and I'll try them out, but I have not practiced them, and those aren't the main objective. It's making sure that I'm at the right range, and these are all simple things, and I can, beat people with these very, very simple fundamentals. That's all I have learned with Akuma. All I have practiced with Akuma, I should say. I can watch videos and try to replicate those things. I watch Samurai or Snake Eyes, I think, also plays Akuma. Of course, Takedo. And I just do that. And I want to make some sort of like follow along video where, here's a white belt version of your hit confirms. Here's how to make it more difficult. Here's how to make it even more difficult. Find your character and follow along. Now, I don't know exactly what that'll look like in the long run, which is why it's not done yet. But I think that, outside of having an in-game tutorial, that's the best thing that I can think of it's boring, but it's going to develop some skills.
No, I agree entirely. And I think one of the most important things that a lot of people in the FGC fail on, and I think Sejam hit on this point recently as well, is that as a brand new player, again, this is assuming totally new, what you need is 5-10 minute videos quickly explaining a concept, not a 2-hour character guide. As a brand new player, I mean, don't get me wrong, the character guides are a fantastic idea. Mm-hmm. But what you're talking about, for example, like the way I see the content that I'm trying to make down the line is, like I said, 10-minute video, not even 5-minute video, right? This is what a poke is. This is what an anti-air is. And more importantly, why it's important. But I think something that we're lacking that needs to be done in these kind of like tutorial series is, after introducing a couple of concepts, you should literally be told, go and play the game. Go and play for a day with just these two concepts, and then come back and watch part 3 of the tutorial. Mm-hmm. Because I think the problem is a lot of people, especially when they're new, will try and overload with so much information. I need to anti-air, I need to tech the trolls, I need to do my meaties. I guarantee you can beat every single person in Street Fighter 5 from rookie to silver with just an anti-air and just a grounded poke, maybe a combo.
Yeah.
You can. So as a brand new player,
100%.
you should learn your character's poke, your character's anti-air, how to tech a throw, go play the game for a couple of days. Come back. All right, we're going to introduce the basic concept of a link. What is a link? Why is it important? All right, now we're going to introduce a motion, a quarter circle. What is it? Why is it important? All right, you've learned those two things. Go play the game. Come back to this next week. I think the problem is people try to overload all the information at once. I'm guilty of this. I will open a tutorial series about playing a new character in Tekken, and there's 20 10-minute videos, and I'll watch all 20 of them, and then go to sit down and play the game, and I'm like, what am I doing? So I think it's on us as teachers to very clearly instruct the student that we're setting like a foundation or a scaffolding for them to learn. And that scaffolding needs to be really sound, but they need to go and do the construction work, if that makes sense. That's the way I look at it.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think the martial artists would agree with you too.
Exactly. I think we are failing. I think that's kind of where we're failing as coaches. You know, not me and you specifically, but the community. Yeah. In that all that information is there in someone's brain. But even when you're explaining, you know, you go and learn Akuma coming from Fang, you know why learning those hit confirms are important. You know why your anti-airs are important. But what we as a community need to do is really, very simply explain to people is, well, this is why a shimmy is important. This is what it is. This is what it means. Because I think a lot of times people will sit down and they'll grind B&Bs and they'll grind setups and they'll grind meaties without really understanding why they're important or when to use them or what they mean.
Yeah.
Which are really hard concepts to grasp because they're often quite subtle.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see the meter go down, but it's sometimes hard to figure out why you're learning.
Exactly.
A shimmy is a little bit more advanced, but you know, any sort of movement that is, you know, a poke or learning your max range normals, that's way more. It's hard to sit yourself down and do and be like, am I doing this right? So yeah, it is. I agree with you 100%.
But I think that, I think that that's where we need to start. We need to bring it way more rudimentary, way more fundamental, and just because you're not going to harm anybody by making it easier. You're just going to benefit the people who are struggling. And if people, you know, maybe are coming into this and they're like, I've played a lot of different types of games. I'm pretty good at games. I think this stuff's a bit basic. You know, maybe they could skip in, start a little bit later, come back if they need to. Well, I know for a fact that if the first time I sat down to play a video game, there was a 5-minute video explaining what a poke is, explaining what a motion is, explaining what a throw is, and what a tech is, every little thing, step by step, and why it's important, I'd probably be in a better place right now. Yeah,
and something else too that you said, for people who, you know, they think they got it, I am really eager to challenge people and ask them, like, do you really think you have it, or do you just really want to learn the fancy stuff?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you have to tell, as a teacher, you have to tell them, no, this is what you need to learn.
Yes. I think that kind of leads into an extremely popular theory of, well, it's a psychological theory more than a teaching theory, but I guess it applies specifically to learning. It's the 4 stages of learning, or the 4 stages of competence. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, I believe so.
So I think this is like integral, because if you break it down, it's unconscious incompetence. So you don't know what you don't know is an easy way to put that one. You know, followed by conscious incompetence. I'm not taking the throws. I'm not hitting that combo. So you're aware of what you're incompetent at, but you haven't rectified it. Followed by conscious competence, where you are sitting down, practicing, grinding that combo, grinding those tech timings, and then you're able to do it in a match, but you're thinking about it. I think that's where the vast majority of players plateau off. The unconscious competence is when Daigo is able to tech 8 throws in a row without thinking about it, or where every single combo is just, you don't even think about it. Totally unconscious. And what I think is the fighting games in particular, because it's a 1v1 environment, everybody is somewhere on this ladder of 4 stages. So, but the person you're playing against is also somewhere on this ladder. And I think the matchup of these levels of competence is actually incredibly interesting in the FGC. So, for example, one of the easiest examples to think of, which is it's a funny example, but the amount of players who will say something like, oh, I lose to these gold players because they're so random, but I do really well against masters. That is the definition of unconscious incompetence, stage 1. You are losing to these goals because you're totally unaware of what exactly is they're doing. Now, you think it's random. It may be random. They may be crazy, but they're doing stuff you don't understand and beating you. Now, you think you're doing better against the Masters because you can't see what they're doing. They're doing it more slowly because they're usually more methodical players thinking about things on levels of mind games above this player who's losing the goals. But the point being, you still don't understand what it is they're doing to beat you, even though it feels less awful. And I think that's like the definition of unconscious incompetence. Damn, man, I do really well when I play against these diamonds, but I just can't beat these random gold players. If you're someone who thinks that, you need to sit down and be like, damn, let's just focus on why I'm losing to these gold players.
It's a good point. It's a really good point.
You know? So when you have somebody like that play against somebody like Daigo, who doesn't have to think when he plays the game, it's night and day. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And Daigo's not going to lose to these gold players.
No, exactly. And I think Daigo actually brought it up about a couple of young Japanese players who were exceptionally good at playing against him and Tokido and Fudo and all these Japanese pros, but would lose in tournament to random platinum players because it's a different methodology. When you are at unconscious competence, the highest level of this hierarchy, when you are Daigo playing Problem X, when you are Luffy playing against Punk, both of you are so competent at what you're doing, you don't have to think about it, and you're just playing mind games. But when you play against somebody halfway down the ladder who's thinking really hard about everything they do, it's a totally different game. Because they're probably not playing half the mind games you're playing, and you're wasting your time by playing them.
Yep, and that's where that repetition comes back to, which is the whole point of what I was talking about before, because that's how you get, in my opinion, in my experience, how you get to unconscious competence is a gross amount of experience. You know, obviously you have to play a bunch of matches, but also if you hone in on individual skills and make it to where it's, you know, your whiff punishes, you make that automatic, your links, anything that requires execution or any sort of input, you shouldn't be thinking about those things. And I'm still in that category where I have to think about my input sometimes when I'm playing as Akuma, a lot of the time. But when I play as Fong, it's like, you know, I'm unconscious. I mean, there's still a lot more growth, but what I do know, it's definitely already there. And I find myself like whiff punishing without even like realizing, and I'm surprised by me doing it. You know, so I agree with what you're saying 100%. And, you know, repetition, but also that desire has to be there.
That's it. It's the motivation is difficult. And I think one of the most interesting points about, you know, the way I learned this theory of competence is that the highest stage, unconscious competence, so we're talking about the highest level, was explained to me as when you reach this level, you might be able to teach other people depending on how you learned it. And that's the highest level. So that, like, in my, like, look, it's almost like an overview of this whole thing we're talking about, that progressing through these stages of competence needs to be done in a way that when people do reach this fourth stage, we can sit down with somebody at stage one and actually help them.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. Man, this is a topic I want to revisit in a few months or something, and keep talking about it. And I think it's something that we have to continually put a spotlight on. And it's something that I'm personally fascinated by. It sounds like you're very passionate about this. So, you know, I'd love to have you on the show again and talk about this some more and really like keep digging deep into this, especially like, it sounds like a both ways Street Fighter.
I play everything under the sun, but yes.
Oh, okay, good. All right, awesome. So I have a couple of, you know, questions that I ask every guest before we close out. It sounds like you do commentary and you're also very involved in the community. You know, I would love for you to give some advice to someone who, you know, who also has fallen in love with the community, but they're just getting started and, you know, wants to know, like, how can I do what you're doing?
How to do what? Well, I don't do anything. I just show up and people give me money or tell me sit down and shout at people. No. Okay. So honestly, I think it's so simple, and it goes for everything in life, is you don't get anything you don't ask for. Less than a year ago, I was basically nobody. I still am nobody, but I've now done a couple of ranking events, a couple of majors, you know, things like that. I'm working with some teams on, you know, big live tournament events. All you have to do is ask. Hey guys, you know, it might be your locals, it might be an online Discord you're in, anything, any kind of production or stream. If it's commentary specifically you're looking for, just step up and ask. Hey guys, do you mind if I try out for an hour? Maybe someone who's more experienced there could give me some feedback, anything like that. Just ask. Another Irish commentator, a good friend of mine, Sam the Ding, he's a Tekken commentator. was like mind blown when I told him, no, I just messaged Tasty Steve on Twitter and asked him a question, or I just messaged HD Jammers on Twitter and asked them a quick question. It's a community. We are a community. Just ask people. Ask for advice. Ask to get your spot. It's as simple as that.
I will echo that. I like that. Okay, well then, other than that, I mean, where, you know, if you're doing commentary or, you know, you have things to say, where can people find you?
So the main thing is Salt Mine TV or Salt Mine League TV on Twitch. So that's every Sunday, 3 p.m. Irish time. I'm not sure what that is. So that would be maybe 8 p.m. Eastern. No, the other way. 10 a.m. Eastern, I believe. So what that is, that will be it's an 8-week season. So we have a tournament every Sunday and we have a prize pool sponsored by donations. The top 8 is normally Ultra Grandmaster and Grandmaster level. We have a couple of Warlord players also entered. It's a very high level tournament basically once we get to the top 8. So I'm usually commentating that, depending on whether we have different, you know, guest commentators or different people in and out. Other than that, I would say keep an eye on As One Productions. I'll be working with them for the coming year, doing their Street Fighter commentary, hopefully for, you know, things like the Road to Celtic Throwdown and our major here in Ireland, Celtic Throwdown. And obviously you can find me on Twitter ranting and raving about all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's where I found you. All right, well, anything else you want to add on before we head out?
I think the most important thing, whether it be getting into commentary, getting into playing, getting into TOing or learning or teaching, just speak up and ask somebody. It's the most important lesson you'll ever learn in this community.
Well, there you have it. Again, thank you so much for joining. My name is The Philosopher. Again, this is FGC Philosophy. And as always, guys, we'll see you all in the next one.